Back to one-on-one. Lydia Pirner here, and I'm pleased to be joined alongside the designer of the Miracle on Ice 45th anniversary merchandise creator, Mr. Gary Lowe. Lowe founded Lowsport, which has been a leader in officially licensed fan gear for over 30 years now. His brand has been so successful that US Hockey has actually licensed it as well, along with designing the iconic logos for the Miracle on Ice team. He has also been in the business of designing specialized Formula One and Indy racing products and has also been able to separate himself in the sports merchandising market because of his product's quality and attention to detail. So, Mr. Lowe, welcome on today. Thank you for joining me. How are you doing?
Good. I'm doing well.
So, before we jump into, kind of the sports merchandising part of your career, I got to ask you, from one hockey fan to another, you were there in 1980 at the Miracle on Ice, run. Just what was it like being in Lake Placid, the spectacle, the atmosphere, what it meant to the country and program, etc.?
So just to give you a little hockey background, I played as a youngster in Westchester for the White Plains over at Ebersol, and my family had Rangers season tickets. It's now going on 56 years, and so I've been a hockey fan forever. And part of our package of having Ranger tickets, we would get other events. So to backplace this, 10 days before I went up to Lake Placid, I went to Madison Square Garden and watched Russia beat the US 10-3. So my uncle invited me up to Lake Placid because they had the EKG machine, the Olympic Village, that was being used by the athletes. And so they were a sponsor. So he said, why don't you come up? And I was a freshman in college in upstate New York. And he said, why don't you come up the last weekend and you'll get to go to some events. So I got up there Friday afternoon and he said, we're going to go to the USA Russia game, which was actually at 5 o'clock, even though it was broadcast at 7. And I said, I don't want to go. He goes, what do you mean? I go, I just saw him lose 10-3. And I was such a fan of swag and merchandise, and I was into ski racing. I just wanted to walk around town. So, of course, I went to the game. I happened to luckily sit first row, and the rest is history. It was a wonderful event, obviously, greatest moment in sports history, they say, especially in this country. Sorry, let me turn off my phone. And It was wonderful. What I remember probably most is leaving the game, going down the staircase, and everybody talking about going over to Afghanistan and getting rid of all the Russians over there. I mean, it was a lot more than a hockey game. It was USA versus Russia, and it was wonderful. Um, the rest is kind of all a blur. The entire weekend, of course, on Sunday I went to the morning game was U.S. versus Finland. Um, and we came from behind again, the U.S. to win that game. And lucky enough, I got to. We also had tickets to the third place game in the afternoon. Was Sweden, Finland? Was Sweden versus Russia, and following that game was the medal ceremony. I probably didn't stay much for the Sweden Russia game, or came in late and stayed for the medal ceremony. Um, and that's it. Went to the end, closing ceremonies. Fast forward 37 years, I took my business, which was in Formula One and Indy merchandise, and then I left that and got involved in rugby merchandise. And I went up to Lake Placid. It was 37 years later, and I went up there for a rugby event in the summer, and somebody hooked me up for a private tour who was from Lake Placid of the Olympic Museum and the arena and everything. And I started having flashbacks and thoughts, and I came up with this idea to take the 1980 jersey as a hoodie because I felt that people don't really wear hockey jerseys outside of going to a game as much. And now it's 8 years later, and it's my business, a big part of my business. And you can see everything on my site, Lowsport Gear. I've taken a lot of my photos that I've taken, I've turned them into postcard sets. I've been lucky enough to now have a very special relationship with Jack O'Callahan. And then this past fall, I sat with Mike Ruzioni and did an autograph session with him. And last week, I spent about 2 hours with Jim Craig doing an autograph session with him. And I managed to meet almost every player on the team at this fantasy camp they have every May. And I'm living my dream. These guys are my heroes. And of course, Saturday is the 45th anniversary, which is just mind boggling for me, and I'm sure for them also, and for everybody else who remembers where they were watching the game.
Oh, I guess you kind of mentioned, being around all these players and living the dream, kind of getting to know them. So obviously you mentioned Jim Craig, Ruzioni was obviously the captain, O'Callahan. Do you have any unique stories that maybe they told you or you witnessed, or anything that sticks out kind of about these guys?
Um, I would say my best story, honestly, is about Herb Brooks, and I actually 4 years ago got very involved with the Herb Brooks Foundation. I've managed to meet Herb's two children, and I'm have permission to use his quotes, his name and likeness, and I've created a whole Herb Brooks collection. Been out to Minnesota, and I've just learned what an icon he is at the University of Minnesota, and there's a restaurant and everything else. But when Herb became coach of the New York Rangers, my best friend's father was the Ranger team dentist, and they had an anniversary party, and Herb came to the party, and I knew he was coming. So I bought in one of my photographs, which was the team on the podium getting their medals when they all put their finger up that said number 1, and they were in their blue sweatsuits. And so I went over to Herb to give him one of the photographs. And I guess no one really had ever given him anything, and he was used to maybe seeing newspapers and anything else. And he was like, wow, this photo's unbelievable. Where did you get it? And I'm like, Herb, I was there, and this was like unbelievable, and thank you. And I gave it to him. And then he's like, well, what can I do for you? I'm like, what do you mean what you could do? I had the greatest weekend ever. I'm a hockey nut. And I'm like, well, he goes, here's my, number. Let me know what I could do for you. So 6 months later, I actually went to a Ranger game and sat in the penalty box as a photographer. And back then, you didn't wear a helmet, and there was also no glass in front of the penalty box. So this was probably 1983 or 84. So that was pretty cool. Eruzione actually was inducted into the New York State Hockey Hall of Fame, which is in Troy, New York, in August last year. So I got to do an autograph session with him and hear him speak. He was excellent, very funny, um, and interesting to hear. And they all tell some great stories. And then Jim Craig last week also spoke a little bit, and I got to listen to him speak. But these guys are my heroes. And Jack O'Callahan, you know, he's just a great guy. And they all, you know, like every family, they all have their issues. Like Jim Craig said, people think we're all best friends. We lived together and played together for 6 months, and then we went our separate ways. But they did get together for the 35th, the 25th, 35th, and 40th anniversary. They're not getting together for the 45th. They probably will get together for the 50th. We obviously have lost 3 players plus Herb already, and hopefully, the rest will be around for the 50th. And they're all special characters. Mark Wells I got to meet in the New York State Hockey Hall of Fame. Mark Pavlich, I got to sit with and meet and reminisce about his time being with the Rangers and living in Rybrook and practicing at Playland. And it's been really special getting to know them. And they're just people and grandparents and parents like everybody else.
Well, you make mention of Herb Brooks. Obviously, he was the coach of that team. And for someone like me, I was born well after that game. And my only recollection, I guess, of Herb Brooks is seeing Miracle about 100 times. I remember in elementary school bringing it in to like watch a movie day and trying to get all my friends to vote for it so we could watch it as a class. But I don't know how well you could answer this, but the movie, is it pretty indicative of who Herb Brooks was as a coach? Or obviously Hollywood tends to dramatize things, but what are your thoughts, I guess, on Herb Brooks and how the movie portrays him? And is he really that type of, hard-nosed hockey coach? Or
Um, yes and no. I would definitely say that Disney did their magic on the movie in a variety of places. And I'm not the best example I could give is Jack O'Callahan. We could talk about next. But in terms of Herb, what I've heard from the players is it was pretty accurate. And Kurt Russell did a lot of homework talking to Herb's wife, Patty, who is still alive, and to Herb's children and to the players. So he gave an accurate depiction of Herb's personality. And yeah, everyone says it was very accurate. Yeah.
so I guess going along the, being there and you've mentioned like kind of being like a huge that these guys are your role models. And what does it mean for you just, being a fan, being at that game, to now being able to create a product for such a special, 45th anniversary that USA Hockey, is trusting you. So what goes into kind of like the feeling and also being able to make that product and make it special?
Um, I've always taken pride in everything I did in my licensed merchandise. And I'd say my background coming from Formula One, which is the highest form of car racing, with brands that I was involved with, like Ferrari and Mercedes. And that's always trickled down to everything else I've done in licensed sports. So I've always tried to create product that is as nice as anything that you see out there with the NFL or NHL, but in a much smaller scale, because though the Miracle on Ice and even USA Hockey mean a lot to the public, USA Hockey, of course, is only very important every 4 years during the Olympics. Of course, the fact of this face-off series where we're having the USA Hockey US play Canada tonight, Thursday night, is fantastic for this country and for Canada. But Miracle on Ice has two generations. It has everyone that's 50 years old and older that remembers it from watching it. And then it has the US born hockey players that grew up and their parents made them watch the movie, and now they remember the movie and they all want to play like Micah Bruzioni or Jim Craig or Jack O'Callahan. And so, ultimately in every sport, the most popular item is the jersey, which another company makes. But, my best selling item has been the hoodie. And anybody who doesn't own it, it's the nicest hoodie, I believe, on the market in terms of feel and fabric and everything else. And I'm proud of that. And now it's trickled over to everything else, including this year came out with a set similar to what Lego makes of the Herb Brooks Arena in Lake Placid, bobbleheads of Herb Brooks and Jack O'Callahan, and we just announced a Jim Craig bobblehead depicting the picture I took of him at the buzzer on the Miracle on Ice game. So we're having a lot of fun with it. And I'm trying to with everybody else keep the miracle alive, and hopefully we'll keep it going at least up to 50. And Lake Placid, if you have not been, has kept it alive, and it's very important to their city. They put a lot of effort during COVID to redo the museum up there and the arena and all the Olympic venues. And it's a fantastic place to go visit. And it definitely makes you feel like you were there in 1980.
You kind of make mention of, the generations and the trying to keep this memory alive. And you saw, a week ago, Ruzioni's at the table with the Team USA roster for the Four Nations tournament. I guess, and also the players made mention of the fact that they've watched Miracle multiple times just to kind of inspire them putting on that USA jersey. So do you think there's one thing or a couple things that have helped keep the memory of that team alive? Because it seems like it's just a sports classic that will never go away. And you kind of, mentioned trying to preserve and keep that come 50, 55, and so on. But what do you think has been so special about this memory, other than, of course, the impossibility of it happening?
Yeah, and it's interesting because when I speak to the shop manager in the Olympic arena up in Lake Placid, she'll actually tell me that the younger generation of all the kids that play in these Can-Am tournaments that are every weekend, that a lot of them don't understand that this is a true story. And they think it's just a movie because someone hasn't explained that to them. And then, they learned and they find out. But again, it's a long time ago. So unless you see the original video, which unfortunately doesn't get aired because now NBC owns all the Olympics, but ABC owns the footage from the original game. So that's a shame. Once in a while, there's specials, etc., and there's probably things available on Amazon to download. But the story's wonderful, and really, what changed everything, I would say, is when Disney did the movie. There's just the way they do things, and I was mentioning before that when they filmed the movie, Disney went to Jack O'Callahan and they said, "We're going to take your character and we're going to make you a household name." And they twisted his story, and they had a very special, good-looking guy with great hair playing him, and they told him everybody's going to know you. And that's the amazing thing is Jack is as popular as Mike and Herb and Jim Craig in the movie because of the person playing the part and what Disney did with the movie. And they had premieres in Los Angeles and in Lake Placid, black tie affairs and everything. And that was also a breaking point for Jim Craig, Mike Ruzioni, who were able to take the movie and turning it into their careers using that for speaking engagements and personal appearances. And today, which is now what 25 years later since the movie came out, it's their careers continue to be very strong with personal appearances and speaking engagements. So that's been great, but that movie was really a turning point, and obviously social media has helped, and everything else. And one other thing I'll find interesting is USA Hockey. I went out to visit them during COVID, and their take as an organization is very interesting because even though it's the greatest win ever by a USA Hockey team, on the other side, there have been other ones that they don't want to dismiss, such as the 1960 men's team that won in Squaw Valley. And then, of course, the great wins by the women's team, the first time the women's won a gold medal, etc. So they're very cautious to celebrate all their gold medal teams over the years in Olympics and world championships, and to kind of treat them equally. So that's been interesting to me and maybe a little time frustrating because I think this one is, especially being that I was there, biased. And when you throw in everything that was going on between the two countries at the time, it just, made it so much more different. So, yep.
Well, I guess the last thing I got for you is, seeing how successful that tournament was in international hockey. And we haven't really had international hockey since I guess 2016 was that last World Cup of hockey. And then obviously there's positive hope that the NHL will be returning to the Olympics next year. So, seeing all the Olympic events with hockey, I guess as a hockey fan, and what do you think is could be exciting to look forward to for the future of the Olympics and hockey going back internationally?
Yeah, it seems, pretty definite that they're going to Torino. I have to say, 8 years ago when they were in Korea, I had a successful week of merchandise sales, which was right when was just getting involved in it. So when the last Olympics 4 years ago in China was very disappointing to me. And many other companies in the business, such as Ralph Lauren, who did the uniforms, and Nike, who did uniforms, no one did well. I mean, it was during COVID and everything else, and just this country didn't seem interested. And of course, the NHL players didn't go, which I thought was also cool because maybe we could have had a miracle on ice again. But it's exciting that everything's taking place in Italy, which is only 6 hour time zones away versus 13. It will allow for more live games. And that's why the NHL decided to do this Four Nations face off, which seems to be very successful. And I think it's a great lead in for the Olympics next year. And it appears they've now announced that they're going to bring back the World Cup of Hockey also. So we'll see how tonight goes. Hopefully, it will be a close game. And I think we're back on the right track. And, everything needs to align between all the players' associations and the leagues. But, I think we're really, hockey's back internationally. I do wish, and I think everybody wishes that I know that politically, I think I read this week that the US and Russia were sitting down and talking for the first time in a long time. And it would be wonderful to see, political problems go away with Russia and their problems with the world, and they can return to international competition. That would be wonderful again. I mean, there's a lot of great Russian players in the NHL, especially with the New York Rangers. We have a
Hmm.
few, and it would be great to have them back in it. So, that might be a long shot, but crazier things have happened in this world. So, knock on wood, maybe, a year or 4 years from now, we can have them back involved, as well as the Ukrainian team or anything else. So that would be great.
Well, Missile, I want to thank you again for your time here today on One on One. I've been Lydia Pirner, joined alongside the 45th anniversary Miracle on Ice collection designer, Mr. Gary Lowe. We'll be back with more on WFUV Sports One on One.